Yeah, it was shocking.
John, I'm so sorry you have to go through this.
Yeah, I know, but and seeing the thing about it, their evidence doesn't. It really supports a homicide.
Well, of course, blatant.
Yeah.
It's obvious. It's overt.
Yeah.
There's no question about it.
Yeah.
Look, the most doddering detective could solve this case. I mean, there's no.
Yeah, that's true.
There's no question whatsoever about it. I mean, it's as blatant as it could be.
Yep, and it's worse than that. The evidence that they sent us actually supports the fact that they depended on witness statements more so than they did physical evidence. But let me tell you what I said to them up in Washington in July. Their paperwork said that they went and asked witnesses, did LaVena talk about committing suicide? And the witnesses said no. So then they asked, well, do you guys ever talk about committing suicide? Well, I've been a behaviorist for over 30 years.
Right.
And I find it very, very suspicious that you got people in a combat zone that are glad they're not ducking bullets talking about committing suicide.
Yeah.
And I would doubt that. But then they turned around and asked, well, what did LaVena say? Well, why are you asking that question when they had already told you she didn't talk like that? But then she said she wouldn't do anything like that because that would hurt her family. But then one witness said, yeah, well, she was talking about, well, they had a couple that I told them they manufactured them that said, yeah, she was talking about committing suicide, but she was joking about it. And nobody jokes about committing suicide. Yeah, I've known a few people, that had some real serious problems. And in fact, I worked in the Army. Well, when I first graduated from Lincoln, my first job was one of the counselors in the drug abuse center here at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. And one of my clients, who was about 5'10", 5'11", had some real problems. Drug usage, tried to commit suicide as a teenager in high school, and had gotten a Dear John letter. And he actually went out on a rifle range and stuck a M16 rifle in his mouth and shot himself. But being 5'10", 5'11", he was just barely able to get it in his mouth.
Yeah.
And he said it blew his face off.
Doesn't sound like fun.
Yeah. So I was quite familiar with that weapon, and I know the capacity of it. Plus, I have a brother, and I mentioned my cousin that got killed in Vietnam. I have a brother who was actually wounded over there. And he just recently, he was in law enforcement for 29 years, and when we sat and discussed the capacity of that M16 rifle, it can be devastating, especially a close-range shot like that.
Yes.
And anybody that knows anything about guns know that an exit wound is always bigger than the entry wound.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, anybody knows that. And I even got a picture of the bottom of her brain, which is directly over her mouth, and you only have damage on one side, and you can see where that bullet bored through. Now, I'm going to say this. We originally thought that the bullet had mounted in her tongue because we had an independent autopsy done here, and the one we done here, this guy just, he told me one of the people who signed off on the autopsy in the Army was a good friend of his.
Really?
Yeah, he should have stepped down, but he didn't. But he did an autopsy, and he came to me and said it was inconclusive. But there were some remarkable comments that he made in that particular autopsy. For an example, he said her tongue had been surgically removed.
Her tongue had been surgically removed?
Correct. And that was ironic because the autopsy in the Army said that there was no damage to her tongue. So we originally thought that that bullet mounted in her tongue, and they went in there and cut it out. But just recently, we did receive some pictures from the autopsy that was done here, and right underneath her chin, we can see a hole that looks like it had been patched. But it had been over 2 years, and it had started deteriorating. So we think that bullet came all the way through her chin. And now they said they never found it. I'm saying that if they didn't find it, then whoever shot it took it with them. Otherwise, they got a bullet and they know who it is.
How many times was she shot?
Once.
One time.
Yeah.
But this hole in the chin, I mean, this is underneath the chin?
Underneath the chin. And if you line up a ruler from that hole that's on the left side of her head, it comes straight down.
So do you think she was shot upward, through the chin upward?
No, that's an exit wound.
Oh, underneath her chin was an exit wound.
Correct.
So the tongue, of course, would have shown the traversing of the bullet downward.
Correct.
And it would have refuted the idea that she stuck this weapon in her mouth to kill herself.
Yeah.
So that's why they cut it out, so you wouldn't have it available as evidence, which would be proof positive that she was murdered.
Right.
Unless they think that she balanced her weapon on the top of her head somehow, and then had a string attached, and with quite an intricate performance.
Well, you can look at the beveling on the brain and see, like the bottom of the brain, the beveling is going down. So she was shot in the head on the left-hand side, and that bullet trajectory came down, and it went all the way through her chin. And
it's evident from the physical evidence not only that she was not actually killed in the tent.
No.
She was killed elsewhere.
Yeah.
And presumably after a sexual assault.
Correct.
And it involved more than one person.
Correct.
So you got two or three maybe. I don't know. How many?
2 or 3. The reason we know it has to have been at least 2, because when she was hit in her face that first time, that should have knocked her down and out. But then she was hit a second time. And if you were to take both your hands and you made a one line from the nose down to lacerations that was on the side of her mouth, then you'd have to take your other hand and go in a V, which means that there's no way that would have been from one blow. So it had to have been 2. So somebody must have been holding her up when that happened. And in addition to that, she had a dislocated shoulder, dislocated elbow.
My God.
She was. It was. Some of the things I'm telling you, I haven't even told my wife.
Well, this is such an obvious case of brutality and sexual assault and multiple assailants and murder. I mean, it's as blatant as it could be.
Yeah.
This is just shocking, absolutely shocking. I mean, even after hearing of other cases, this is a stunning case, Dr. Johnson.
Yeah, I know, and to show you how bad it is, you got the national news media that won't come near it. And you know who Colonel Ann Wright is, don't you?
Well, I've read of her here about someone who's been outspoken about sexual assaults in the military and trying to do what you can to correct the situation.
And that is one thing that she is really appalled at, is that the national news media won't even help us out.
Well, the media seem to be dominated by the CIA, and obviously the cooperation between the military and the CIA is a very high degree, and I think anything that's going to be contrary to the interests of the American military is something the CIA is going to want to suppress, and through their representatives, as it were, in the media, I think they're able to exclude all the we don't get any discussion of the really serious issues that confront this country, and it certainly includes cases like this where the American military is abusing its own and protecting the guilty. I mean, these guys get away with a sexual assault and murder of your daughter under such blatant circumstances. What are they going to do with the next young woman who invites her attention?
Yeah. And you compound that with the fact that our case has been labeled as one that can't get the coverage because of advertising dollars. You got CBS and ABC, they're owned by these large companies like Westinghouse, and these companies have these multi-million-dollar contracts with the military, and so they're not going to bite the hand that's feeding them, so to speak. And so that compounds the problem.
Well, it's an incestuous relationship, isn't it?
Yeah, it sure is. Certainly.
This is truly, truly disgusting. I was going to suggest to you that the way to proceed would be politically, going through your representative and so forth, but you've already done that. And that's the right thing to do, clearly. This Christopher Gray, the spokesman for the Army Criminal CID, called its investigation of the Johnson case thorough and complete.
Yeah.